Okay, I'm back. Our 5 minutes is almost up. I've got less than a minute. And I'm going to show you how you're going to store these. Like I said, you're going to want a towel or you're going to want a sheet. If you have an old sheet that, you know, that's ripped or is no longer used on your bed. Those are perfect for when you do canning. I don't usually use the towel as too much. Sometimes I do. I use it more for like jams and jellies than I do for actual canning. When it comes time to canning the sauce and the tomatoes, we'll switch to a sheet because that's a lot easier to check to see if there's anything dripping off of the jars. So this is gonna buzz. Okay, and now what we're gonna do is we're gonna remove the jars. This thing works so great to grab the jars because you don't want to use anything other than, and I'm already looking to see how many pickles, and I could have definitely packed these a lot more with pickles. So you just want to make sure that the band is on tight, and when you store them, you're going to store them upside down. Ice move. And again, these are really hot, and you want them to cool for 24 hours. Oh, just for your in? Okay. Is everybody in? Sorry, I had to get the rest of the dogs in. It's lightly raining, it's not totally raining. I use a thicker towel because these are so hot. Okay. I'm getting all my big quart jars out right now. These just are so hot. Go. Now we're going to grab our paint jars out, and I'm going to turn you guys around so you can see this. Okay. Watch out, Lucy. I've got 2 more jars to do. And you just want to make sure you tighten the bands. Oops. And sometimes you have one that tips on this side, so you just gotta lift that out. Put that on the counter, and grab it. Just gotta tighten that. And I'm gonna turn you guys over so you can see all of the jars are right there, and I'm just going to cover it. Hopefully you guys saw that. Yeah, those are the jars. We're going to just cover it. Now, you want to leave them alone for 24 hours. So, while we're working on the dill pickle recipe tomorrow, we're going to check. The one thing you want to check is you want to make sure that your towel is totally dry. If there are any wet spots or any wet rings, that means that the jar is leaking and it probably won't have sealed. But tomorrow, in 24 hours, you want to press down on the jars to make sure that they don't pop up. If they pop up, of course, they also didn't seal. But if they don't, then they're fine. Then you can go ahead and put them up. Now, again, if you're new to canning, you can remove the bands, but not within the first 7 days. So you want to leave the bands on your jars at least for the first week. After a week, what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that your lids don't spring off. And then if you want to remove the bands, you can remove the bands. Now, there are some instances where I don't suggest you doing this. Your jams, I don't necessarily suggest doing that with. And your pickles are probably another thing that I'm not going to suggest you do that with. Because when you do that with liquid, you're playing with if there's any air that can get into the jar, you potentially could cause a problem. So, that concludes the bread and butter series. I hope you guys all enjoyed this. Don't forget to hit the like button. Leave me a comment if you have any comments, questions down below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to get more great Cooking with Joel videos. I'll see you on the next Cooking with Joel video. Okay, hi all. Welcome to my kitchen. Today is Saturday. It is the 5th of August. We've done our bread and butter pickles, and fortunately for me, I decided to go ahead and read my great-grandmother's pickle recipe, and I'm glad I did, because you need to do one quick step before you actually do the pickles. So, I'm going to flip you guys around to the table. Actually, I'm going to bring you over the table. If you're new to my channel, welcome. We are in our canning series, and this will be the last of the canning for the time being. After I do the dill pickles, there's going to be a lull in canning probably for a month or so until we get into the tomato season. Once the tomato season begins, then I'll be canning even more. I'll be doing the tomato sauce, and you guys will want to watch that video because that makes the beginnings of my actual sauce recipes. So this is my Bubby's, which would be my mother's grandma or my grandmother's mother's recipe. And this is the first step you need to do when you're making dill pickles, especially her recipe. You're going to want to wash your pickles really well, and you're going to soak them in salt water overnight. So basically, all you're going to do is you're going to get a enameled bowl, and you're going to need an enamel cast iron pot for this recipe. Unfortunately, this recipe only will work if you have an enameled pot. If you don't have an enamel pot, you might want to find a different, or a crock pot. It will work in a crock pot. So I take that back. A crock pot or an enamel pot works wonderful for this recipe. So I'm just going to clean out the bottom of my La Creuset. And La Creuset, if you have La Creuset potware, this works wonders with this recipe. So I'm going to flip you guys around, and I'm going to grab the pickles out of the refrigerator. Now, I have 5 pounds of pickles, and I used 5 pounds for the bread and butter. So I used half of them for bread and butter, and that made 4 quarts and 3 pints of pickles. So, what you're going to want to do is the same thing you did for the bread and butter pickles. And you're going to want to rinse and make sure that there's no dirt on your pickles. Now this time, like I said, you're going to leave them whole. You're not going to cut them, and I'm going to move you guys closer so I'm not shouting. You're going to leave these whole, and I'll show you in a few seconds what I mean. And these are a really good pickle. I do remember when my great-grandmother was alive, and my great-grandmother, or my bubby, because I never actually did call her great-grandmother. She was always known as affectionately as Bubby to me. And my grandmother was always Grandma. So, how many pickles do you need for this recipe? Well, that's entirely up to you of how many dill pickles you want to do. And I would have to consult the recipe. And it's really, really old. As a matter of fact, my grandmother hand wrote this on a piece of paper, and I was afraid I lost it. And I'm going to show you my grandmother's recipe, and it wants about 4.5 pounds of pickles. So I'm going to put that up close so you guys can see that. And this is in my grandmother's handwriting. And sadly, I lost my grandmother in 2012 to lung cancer, but my grandmother lived to the ripe old age of being 90 years old, so it was a blessing in disguise. And like I said, depending on how many pickles you actually want is up to you. This one does use 4.5 cups, and I'm going to show you in a second here what we're going to do. I'm going to turn you guys around. Those are the pickles. And for the overnight part, what you're going to want to do is you are going to want to fill your enamel with cold water, and you're going to add salt. Now, on this, she doesn't have... I'll be right back. That's going to play.